Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Mary Price. I'm the Events and Marketing Director at the Shingo Institute at Utah State University, and I'm thrilled to kick off this session with you. We have two fantastic guests with us, Chris Butterworth and Eric Belinsky. Chris is not only a respected Shingo Academy member and faculty fellow, but also a multiple-time Shingo Publication Award recipient. He's someone who truly lives and breathes excellence. Eric is a seasoned lean expert with over 25 years of experience across multiple industries, including more than a decade in consulting. He's also the CEO of 4Results, a Shingo licensed affiliate, and brings a deep understanding of how these leadership principles translate globally. Today, we're diving into insights from Chris's brand new book, Leading Excellence, The 5 Hats of the Adaptive Leader. It's a powerful framework for anyone striving to lead with agility and purpose. Co-authors on the book are Stephen Dargan and Brad Jevons. Eric also has in-depth knowledge of the book as he translated it into Polish. If you subscribe to our newsletter, you may have already gotten a sneak peek through the article we shared last week. And if you haven't, no worries, you can check it out anytime. Just go to shingo.org/articles. Chris and Eric, I'm excited to have you with us, and I'll turn the time over to you.
Thank you, Mary. Much appreciated.
Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
And you'll see at the left corner of that slide the Polish version of Leading Excellence. And Eric and myself did the official launch of that yesterday in Poland together. So we thought it was a great opportunity because of the time for us to both be on this session. So welcome, everybody. We're going to give you a very high-level overview of the book. And you will be getting a recording of this video and a copy of the slides, which Mary will send you afterwards. But I hope it encourages you to also have a more in-depth look at the book. My computer has decided to freeze. As Mary mentioned, I just want to give recognition to my co-authors, Brad and Steve Dargan, or Dargs as you know him, both very old, long-time friends of mine, and we worked together for many years and used a lot of our experiences in creating this book. So I always think it's a good place to start with why. Shingo teaches us that why is very important. So the why behind we wrote this book was because we think there is a huge opportunity to increase the levels of engagement in organizations around the world. Every year, Gallup publishes an engagement survey, and time and again, it shows that engagement levels are typically around 25% in most, as an average across organizations. Well, that's pretty shocking. It's even lower than that in many countries. Imagine the potential that we're wasting, the waste in human potential, because when people are not engaged, they are not contributing their best. What the research shows is that 3 things have a huge impact on people's engagement. One of them is the quality of the relationship with the direct boss. Do they feel valued by their boss? There are a couple more, which we cover in the book as well. Do they feel a connection between personal purpose and business purpose? And do people feel that the organization is interested in the personal development and growth? But all of those 3 things are in the control of leaders. So who is responsible for improving the levels of engagement? It's us as leaders. And we need to look in the mirror and say, well, what can we do about it? Because if we look at this in a positive way, imagine how great places could be if we could get that 25% to 50%, or even 75%. Or even at Shingo prize level organizations where typically it's 90–95% plus. Huge opportunity. So we wrote the book around how might leaders do that? What do we need to do to improve those levels of engagement? Firstly, we believe that if we want to be better leaders, we need to have a better understanding of ourselves. And we had a lot of help in this, developing this, and we came up with a core, what we call a core belief system. Now, behind this is the fact, and it is a fact, that mainly we are feeling beings who have the ability to think. However, in most situations, the way we respond is entirely emotional. Now, if you want to test that, just think about, in the past, has there ever been a time when you have said something or sent an email and then very quickly said, oh no, I wish I hadn't done that? That's because you responded emotionally. It's the way that we are wired. Now, from a leadership point of view, we have a massive impact on people in the way that we talk to them. If we just respond emotionally, we risk not having a great reaction from the person we're talking to and not getting the best out of them. So what we need to do is to find a way where we pause and think about what is the right response, or what is the most appropriate response, so that how we respond engages our thinking part of the brain, not just our emotions. And to do that, if we can understand our own personal purpose and our own values, that gives us some grounding to help us to inform us about how we should respond and how we engage our brain. So the first couple of chapters in the book are simple exercises that help us as leaders to understand ourselves better and understand what our purpose is, what our values are, and what makes up our core belief system. But that's not enough on its own. So the subtitle of the book is The 5 Hats of the Adaptive Leader. Because what we also need to be able to do is to build a habit which helps us to think before responding. And that's where the hats come in. And we spent a lot of time deciding on what the 5 hats should be. So there's a lot underneath each one of these hats. But I will just give you a very high-level overview. They're in no particular order. Sometimes people say to me, what sequence should I use them in? It depends. It depends on the context of conversation and the person that we're talking to. But let's start with inspire. So the inspire hat is about helping people to understand how the contribution that they make, the job they do, the purpose, how that connects to the organization purpose. It's about connecting people to the organization, helping people to see what they do is valued, and helping to see how it supports their own personal purpose. That connection is one of the key things that I mentioned earlier in terms of engagement. It's also about inspiring people to make tomorrow better than today, in the sense of continuous improvement. Another key hat is the teach hat. Now, the teach hat is often not just formal teaching, which is also very powerful, because every time we teach something, we learn. We have to learn it very deeply to teach it. And when you teach, you get asked great questions, which make you think about it even deeper. But the other element of the teach hat is mentoring. Mentoring is when we are giving advice as leaders, and when we are giving technical advice and when we are giving personal advice. We are mentoring. However, what many leaders think of as when they're mentoring, they think they're coaching. Our provocation in the book is there is a big difference. Coaching is about asking questions. The coaching hat is our opportunity to not give advice, but to ask questions that help people to think for themselves. With coaching, we're building capability and reducing dependence. Coaching is a key skill in engagement because what we're doing is helping people to grow. We're showing interest in their personal development, and we're showing that we trust them by asking questions that allow them to think for themselves and make decisions for themselves. Very occasionally, we might need to use the direct hat. It's not a hat that we would expect to use a lot of, but when it's needed, it's really important to use it. So, for example, in a safety situation, we might need to call out quickly. In a situation where we have behaviors that are not to the standard that we expect, it is critical to use the direct hat to make it clear those behaviors are not acceptable. It's a key element of showing respect to the rest of the workforce, calling them out and using the direct hat in that way. And the fifth hat is the support hat. Now, under the support hat, this is about knowing our people, making sure that we know what's important to them, what help they need, but also it's about recognition, recognizing the right behaviors that we want more of. I always remember someone saying to me recently, said, my boss keeps telling me, well done, and I have no idea what I'm doing well. Recognition needs to be specific, and it really should be for the behavior that we want to see more of rather than the task that someone's done. Very powerful thing to do under the support hat. So that's a very, very high-level introduction to the 5 hats. There's a lot more detail in the book around that. The way to think about this, the way we build a habit, is we think about what's the context? Who's the person? Pause, think, and respond with the appropriate hat. That may mean that we pause for a couple of seconds. That's okay. Just pausing for a couple of seconds will help us not to react in an emotional way, but to react in a much more thoughtful way with what is the right response in this conversation. Many conversations can't be planned, but many can. So when we have a planned conversation, we can also help to decide which hat to wear by asking a simple question. How do I want this person to think and feel as a result of this conversation? What we're doing by practicing this and practicing the different hats is we're building a habit which makes it easier to use the hats when we need to. What we see in organizations that have very high levels of engagement is that the profile of how leaders spend their time is very different. In organizations at Shingo Prize level, for example, leaders are typically spending 60 to 70% of their time on managing culture, some time on continuous improvement, and a relatively small amount of time on the day-to-day stuff. However, many leaders are in situations like we see on the left-hand side here, where the day-to-day stuff is the majority of the day. We need to think about how we break that cycle. One of the provocations we give in the book is that a lot of this is self-inflicted. If we don't coach our people, if we don't recognize the right behaviors we want, if we don't direct when we need to, we end up having most of our time dealing with things that we shouldn't have happened because we haven't got the right culture in place. So we need to break out of that. And in the book, we talk about how to start doing this, how to say, well, what are one or two things I could do differently that mean I actually spend a bit more time on culture. A simple one could be have a look at your leadership team meetings. Have a look at the time on the agenda. How much time is spent on that agenda on people and culture compared to operations? Or is it the thing that's at the end of the agenda and we often don't get time to talk about it because we're too busy firefighting all the other stuff? Challenge yourself. Change it around. But remember, purpose and systems drive behavior. And ideal results require ideal behaviors. So we can spend a lot of time on defining behaviors and on using the hats to coach people. But if we do all that work and we don't do anything with our systems, we're probably going to get the behavior we've always had before because the system's driving that behavior. So here's a very quick way to think about this. When we think about our business processes or systems, have we considered what are the behaviors that we need this system to drive to give us ideal results? And a nice little sequence to do that in is to say, okay, well, what's the purpose of this system? Am I clear on what I want this system to deliver? What are the results I need from it? When I'm clear on those results, what behaviors are going to get me those results? And then how might I measure those behaviors with key behavioral indicators? There's a whole section in the book where we're talking more detail about key behavioral indicators. But the example I gave you a few minutes ago about the percentage of time we spend talking and managing culture at the leadership meetings is an example of a KPI. So if we want to get ideal results, we need to think about our systems in terms of what behavior do I need? How am I measuring it? Do I then design, or if I've got an existing system, redesign to deliver those behaviors? Measure, am I getting the behaviors with KPIs? And if I'm not, refine the system further. Continuously refine it. This is actually a plan, do, check, act and adjust cycle. It never ends because we constantly need to increase our expectations about what we mean by ideal, both in terms of ideal results and ideal behaviors. Because what we want to do is move from an environment where our people are constrained and have very low levels of engagement to an environment where we have very high levels of engagement and we have committed people who are passionate about where they work and contribute because they enjoy contributing and they make it a better place for them and a better place for the organization and a better place for customers and often the community and even the environment. So the book is available in paperback. It's available as an ebook. It's also available in an audio book, and it's also available in Polish. And also in future will also be in Polish in an audio book as well. So I just wanted to give a moment to bring Eric in, and I want to ask him, Eric, what you enjoyed reading the book so much you decided to translate it, and I wanted to ask you, what were the things you liked most about the book?
Chris, thank you very much for the question. I decided to translate the book even when I did not read it yet. My assumption was when you write the book, it must be at least good. But at the end of the day, I read it in English. I translated into Polish by myself. And I can tell you that this book is excellent. From my perspective, I will not talk about the obvious things like 5 heads, and I think this is a really great opportunity for everybody to understand which head I should use in the which situation, because you give a lot of examples and a lot of case studies which shows precisely when the leader should use which head, which is really, really great. And already Polish people who read the case studies, they really like the way how the book is created. But I have 3 really favorite things about the book. So first of all, I have never read the book about leadership so well connected with the Shingo model. So there is a lot of very nice examples about the Shingo, about the principles, about the very related things with the principles, and I like it really very much because it helped to really understand what is leading with humility, what is the respect for every individual, and how it works together to give a trust, and leader can be really a person who other fully trust. The second thing which I really, really like about the book is you define about the personal purpose and the company purpose, and how important is connected together. And the exercise about the personal purpose and the company purpose is so well designed that when you start to use it to talk to your colleagues, to talk to your leaders, it's amazing how good reflection and thinking you have. And the last thing which I'm really amazed, you are talking about the systems which drives behaviors, and I read about the system of aspiration leaders. So you gave really kind of examples and solutions which are so easy to understand and implement in the company, not as a set of tools, as a set of ideas, but as a really ready system for developing future leaders who are really leading the excellence of the company. So I'm amazed by the book. I'm a big ambassador. After yesterday book launch, we sold already 150 copies today. So I'm extremely happy to and honored to work with you, Chris, and have a chance to introduce your work and your colleagues' work to the Polish audience. And I'm sure it will be an important book for the Polish leaders.
Thank you very much, Eric. Appreciate that. And we should say that all the profits from the Polish book are going to charity, very important charities in Poland. And there's donations from the English version that also go to charities. So, Mary, I guess we could open up the chat for any questions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for presenting, Chris, and thank you for your insights, Eric. If any of the attendees have some questions for Chris, please feel free to ask those in the Q&A, or you're welcome to ask them in the chat too. We'll monitor both areas. So we'll just pause for a few minutes and just see if anybody has any questions. Can you give some examples of KBIs that have worked well?
Yeah, so the key with KBIs is to experiment and try them, and then if they don't work, change them. I'll give you 2 examples. A very simple example would be an organization was struggling to get people to come on time to the huddles meetings. So one team decided that they would have a very simple system where if you were late for the meeting, you got a cross against your name. And if you were late 3 times, you had to buy a cake for everyone else in the team. Okay, manage that team level. The team determined that KBI for themselves. 2 people had to buy cake for the teams, and then they stopped measuring it because no one was late again for the meeting. So another aspect of KPIs is you put them in for as long as you need them. So that's one very simple team level example. Another one from a leadership point of view would be how many, I call them look, listen, and learn activities in the book. So we traditionally might call that Gemba, but I think calling it Gemba can be a bit confusing and maybe doesn't describe fully what we want to achieve. So look, listen, learn. You might have a KPI about, well, how many of those activities are leaders doing? You could then even extend it further and say, what is the quality of the conversations that's happening in those meetings? So that is a very powerful KPI. Anything that measures behavior is a KPI. So how much time am I, if I look at my leader standard work, for example, how much percentage of my time is being spent on managing culture and behaviors? That's another great KPI. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. I have a question from Juliana. She asks, she wants to know what was the basis for you to define the individual purpose exercise?
We had a lot of help in coming up with the core belief system. Dr. Mark Williams, who wrote Professor Williams, who wrote The Connected Species and other books, gave us a lot of advice, and also wrote the foreword for the book. And the gentleman called Mark Williams, who's a workplace psychologist, also helped. So with their thinking, helped us to design that a simple exercise. There's lots of different ways of doing it, but we've decided to keep it as simple as possible. It's just 4 questions you ask and work through as an exercise.
Phoenix asks, what is the difference between inspire and support, which you indicate as recognition?
So inspire is really about setting the spark in people. You can inspire in lots of different ways, but people believe what they see far more than what they hear. So a key part of inspire is behave in the way that you want other people to behave. Be enthusiastic about the work environment. Be enthusiastic about improvement. You're inspiring them that way. Support is actually about understanding what help people might need. Now, that help might be some training and development. It might be help with personal issues at home. But also they might need encouragement. And that's where the recognition comes in, because that recognition is really key to embedding behaviors. So when we're recognizing people, we're encouraging them to carry on doing more of the good things we want them to do, or in terms of more of the good behaviors we want them to exhibit. So there's a lot of crossover between all the hats, but we thought it was, if we can make it clear, when we practice and get better at this, we might use 2 or 3 hats in the same conversation, potentially all 5 sometimes. So we've separated them out to make it easy to practice them and understand what they mean.
Perfect, thank you. Franklin asks, at what point do you know you've arrived in this journey?
Does it ever have an end? But what we have in the book is an assessment where we have the 5 hats, and you assess yourself to say, where am I on a scale of stage 1 is, I need to go and buy this hat, to stage 5 is, I am at a level now where I think I can coach others. We had some great conversations yesterday at the Polish book launch, and people I pointed out that actually it's even more powerful, and Eric actually did this himself today, if they ask their team to say where they are in terms of how skilled they are at applying the different hats. So there's a self-assessment. There's also some tips on how to create plans to say, okay, if that's where I am now, where do I want to be, and how can I close the gap? So I think that is hopefully a bit of an answer to your question that says, well, actually, when I've mastered the hats, then I can start teaching them to other people.
Right.
Also, How do you know if you've arrived? You should see your engagement scores going up dramatically.
Agree. I think this will be our last question for the day. How are you empowering team members to challenge the status quo and suggest improvements when viewed through the lens of the 5 hats?
Great question. Okay, so I think you'd use the inspire hat to inspire them to get into the mindset and say, I want you to do 2 jobs. I want you to do the day job, but I also want you to improve the day job. It's not an extra thing to do. You are a chief problem solver. Please come up with ideas. So you're encouraging and inspiring in that way. I think the support part comes in when you think about, well, what tools could we make sure people are trained in? Are we training them in how to solve problems, for example? I think it would also, if we look at the systems for improvement, do we make it easy to make an improvement? So, and then looking again, that's part of the support. Have I designed it? Have I designed the system in such a way that it makes it easy for people to do a great job and improve that job? Or have I given them a system that actually doesn't encourage improvement? And if they do have a great idea, it takes so long to do anything about it, they just give up, which tells me I need to change the system. So I think in many ways, you could say that all the hats can be applied in different ways to support that culture of improvement.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I know there's a few questions we didn't get to. I'll send those on to Chris and he can respond to you directly as well. Thanks, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the session, and thanks to Chris and Eric, and I hope you all have a good day.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, everyone, for attending.